I reflected a lot and I came up with a lot of New Year's resolutions this year. I don't normally do it. I almost never do New Year's resolutions, but this year I had kind of a bunch because it just so happened I was really thinking about myself and life when the time came. And the problem with New Year's resolutions, the reason that they're so hard to keep is that a year is a year long. If you could make a New Year's resolution and really only had to do it for like 3 weeks, you knock it out of the park. But there's something about the fifth Monday where you're like, again? No. And I think we should all cut ourselves some slack, genuinely, when you have trouble making your New Year's resolution a habit or sticking to it, because New Year's resolutions are as old as calendars. So as long as we've been keeping track, we've been trying to be better and failing. It's very human. And our New Year's resolutions, by and large, are things that we're gonna do or stop doing to stop hurting ourselves. If you read through history and you go back to the New Year's resolutions of whole civilizations, right? The Babylonians, the Romans, these people would have ceremonies, and usually a lot of what they did, a lot of their New Year's resolutions was to appease their gods or the tribe at large. It wasn't just about them. And all of our New Year's resolutions, for the most part, are things we're gonna stop doing or start doing to stop hurting ourselves. They had New Year's resolutions to stop hurting other people. You read back in history, there were just New Year's resolutions of whole tribes that were like, this year, y'all, we not gonna pillage. We were doing too much last year. We were pillaging over here, pillaging over here. Not everything needed to be pillaged. We need to start focusing on us, all right? Even probably had a tribe leader came up with a slogan, we not gonna pillage, we gonna be a village. No, it's as old as time. And admittedly, there are some modern New Year's resolutions. I do know a few people in my life that have had to make New Year's resolutions to stop hurting other people. You know, it's rare, but it does happen. Like I had one friend nonchalantly said, you know what, this year, I'm gonna cut less people. First of all, I didn't know she was cutting anybody. Second, your New Year's resolution is day one. Your New Year's resolution is to cut less. You didn't say none. None was an option. The year hasn't happened yet. You haven't even met who will be worth cutting, and you're still like, I might maybe give them a pass. Said, I'm gonna cut less people, and I was like, what do you mean cut less people? They were like, oh, you know how it is. I hate being asked or told if or that I know how something is when I clearly have no idea how it is. Oh, you know how it is. You go out and somebody press you, and next thing you know, you holding the blade on you. It's like, what life do you think I'm leading? What life are you leading? When are you doing this? I had a couple of New Year's resolutions. One of them was to focus on my health, which I'm already regretting. Genuinely, because this is my thing. When you try to focus on your health in the beginning of the year, you really think you're gonna do it. And that's why I'm making a New Year's resolution. If you tell me what I'm doing wrong, if you tell me what's wrong with me, in like September, I'm probably gonna be like, then I'll die. Sorry. I like doing that. But if we're starting a new year and you're like, don't do that, I'll be like, okay, I'll try, right? No. But the problem is when you focus on your health, you have to go to the doctor. And going to the doctor is a little bit too exact and final for me. If something's wrong with me and I'm telling a friend about it and we're just sort of going back and forth, spitballing about what it could be, it's almost kind of fun. You're like, maybe it's that. Oh, maybe it's that. Let's Google it. Oh, we shouldn't have Googled it. You know what I mean? But when you go to the doctor's like, no, you sick. No. And basically, I had to go to the doctor pretty early because, all right, it's embarrassing to admit, but I feel like if I'm open, if I'm vulnerable about it, then it'll hopefully remove some of the stigma, okay? I had to go to the doctor because too many, I would even say most of my farts were whistling. Okay, all right. So if you're going through what I'm going through and you hear that laughter, that's why I'm doing this, to try to break through, to try to show the normalcy of what was happening to me. So basically, when I would fart, I don't even fart all the time, but every once in a while, you know, one goes, and it was just having at the tail end, very tail end, it was having just a little like to it. I didn't know where it was coming from. I didn't know why it was happening, but I was hearing it. And I'm not like a musician in that way. I don't know a lot of music theory, but it did seem like a bit of a D sharp to it. Like it had a little bit of that fire alarm, a little bit of that at the very end, right? And so one day I was walking and I don't even remember the food that I had had, but it hit me in the wrong way. And so I sounded like a piccolo. I was walking and my steps were just a little fluty. And I don't know about y'all, but sometimes I walk and listen to music. So I'll have my big old headphones on, they're noise canceling so I can really enjoy the music and everything. And I knew I had a problem because the cut through it was so high of a pitch, it must have got under the noise canceler. And so I was just walking, and I don't know, once again, about you, but when I'm wearing my headphones, I'm listening to music, and I'm walking, it feels like I can fart however loud I want because I can't hear it, so then it must not be that bad. I know that's not actually how sound works, but it's just kind of what goes through my head while I'm doing it. And I was walking, I just heard it sort of like, do you remember? And I was like, uh-oh, I should probably talk to somebody. And so I did. I went to the doctor, and when I got to the doctor, I had a bit of an issue because I even tried to use as many big words as I could to describe what was happening to lessen the blow of what I had to say. So I was like, my flatulence is having some orchestral notes to it. And the doctor was like, what? And I'm like, don't do that. One of the main reasons I hate going to the doctor is because if you're a doctor, and especially if you're older than me and you're a doctor, I'm assuming you've been a doctor for a while, right? And if you've been a doctor for a while, then I'm assuming you've seen a lot of stuff. But somehow when I go to the doctor and I tell them my problem, they've never heard of it before. You got all these encyclopedias in here with all these diagrams of people's bodies and stuff, but then I tell you what I'm happening, you're like, what? And then I just made it simple. I was like, look, my farts are whistling. He was like, what? And I was like, that's worse. What happened to bedside manner? And so, he fixed it. I'm fine now. It doesn't happen anymore. But yeah, basically there was something going on where I had pretty much like overexerted myself, and he explained it better, but I guess my organs were kind of like a Tom and Jerry configuration, and it was just making me whistle at the very end, and then it went back to normal. My second New Year's resolution was to be very mindful about what I do and say on a podcast. Now, I'm not perfect, but This has been the downfall of a lot of people. I'm not even saying that there's never going to be a podcast where I talk out of pocket. I don't know. It's just talking. And it's so much talking that along the way, you say something dumb or something that doesn't age well or something that you don't even really think, maybe just talking, right? You get anybody to talk for hours and hours and hours, and eventually they'll say something pretty dumb. So I'm trying to be mindful about what I do and say on a podcast, because when podcasts started, before there was a ton of money in it, it was just one of two things. It was either people who had such a great rapport with each other that listening to them felt like listening with them, like being there with them and just having a party with your friends, and it was an interesting conversation that you felt like you were a part of, right? Or there was a very interesting person, an incredibly interesting person, and then someone had them on their podcast who was a good interviewer. And through giving a good interview, they pulled all of these interesting and beautiful things out of this very interesting person and then gave it to you. And so you either got some sort of education from it or you got some sort of community from it, right? And now podcasts, I think we made too many microphones. Because now it's a genuine mess. You know? Like, I watched what I think was maybe one of the most important podcast clips of all time. One that exactly, perfectly describes what I'm kind of talking about. Mike D has a podcast. And in that podcast, he was talking to OG Tulo, a rapper. And while he was talking to him, OG Tulo reaches into his pocket and somehow shoots himself in the leg. I'm encouraging everyone to watch this clip because it's truly one of the most important moments in podcasting ever. I had so many questions when I saw this man shoot himself in the leg. First of all, what gun is little enough? But also, what pocket is big enough? Because you can't see a gun. He's literally got his hand in his pocket, which means there's a gun and his hand in his pocket. How deep are these pockets? They're like optical illusions. This man reaches into his pocket, and I want to be clear here, okay? OG Tulo and Mike D, they weren't having some sort of argument. Mike D wasn't coming at him. It's not like he was reaching in his pocket to grab his gun. If anything, it looked like he was reaching in his pocket for something else. And can I just say, don't put your gun in your pocket. But if you do, make sure your gun is the only thing in that pocket. Please do not put your gun and your keys in your pocket. I'm begging you not to put your gun and your phone in your pocket. Because this man looks like he's trying to move the gun. When you rewatch it, I've watched it 2,000 times. It looked like he's trying to move the gun out the way to get something else. And I'm telling you, it's not worth it to have your gun and your gum in the same pocket. This dude reaches into his pocket. Bam! And then Mike D, who's sitting across from him, Mike D goes, "Who shot who?" They're facing each other. He turns to the cameras out there where the people are, who I guess are producing the podcast. And he turns to them and goes, "Who shot who?" Somebody got shot? Sir, how often are people shooting each other at your studio for the first question to be, "Who shot who?" He didn't say who shot who as in like, "Oh no, a gun went off." He turned as if to say, "Y'all, we are trying to do something." This man turns. Who shot who? Somebody got shot? When you look for the clip, OG2Low, now that's O, letter O, G, letter G, we're capital letters, the number 2, like an email, OG2Low, right? OG2Low is fascinating to me because there are a lot of rappers who their name is not, it's not true to who they are as a person, right? But to his credit, OG2Low shoots himself in the leg and only goes, his reaction to shooting himself in the leg, all he does is go, ooh. This man doesn't cry, he doesn't freak out, he just makes the face you make when you drop a casserole, just, You know the face you make when you get caught coming home after curfew, you in the dark, you think you made it, then the lights come on and you're like, ooh. He makes the face you make when there's like 2 people arguing out in the world and you don't know either one, but then one of them is like, that's why I took your man, ooh. This man simply goes, ooh. And then a person behind the camera calls out and goes, Low, you good? There are a few things I hate more than being asked if I'm good when I should not be good. When I'm clearly, people wait till you hurt to ask if you're okay. And I understand the reflex question, but you just saw something very bad happen. You saw a man reach in his pocket where he clearly forgot he had a gun. And then shoot himself in the leg, and now you go, Low, you good? And OG2Low simply says, I think. And so I'm trying to be more mindful about what podcasts I do and what I do on them, because I've seen how bad it can go. Another thing, another New Year's resolution I had was to take better pictures of my male friends. Okay? As men, we gotta start taking better pictures. This is rough. We wonder why it's a struggle out here, but I'm telling you, I know good men. Not just decent men, I'm talking about good, wholesome men, father figures, father material, marriage material men who are out here taking pictures forehead first. I'm talking about forehead presented, forehead shiny, optical illusion, forehead forward. I don't even know how you get that angle. Did you put the camera on your head? You know, because that's what happens. As a man, you don't get that many good pictures taken of you by other dudes. You know? And then you post it because it's one of the only good pictures you have. You want to go on a dating site, you want to meet people, you go ahead and you post the pictures you have of yourself because what you have is what you have. And then you put that out into the world and you wonder why there aren't many bites. There aren't a ton of bites because when people are scrolling through your pictures, you look blurry. You look like if they met you, you would only be a memory, you know? You know what I'm talking about? You know that wave look when it's like, it's almost a good picture, but there's that movement at the end, so you're a little blurry on one side? Will she be dating a ghost? Who knows? We've got to start taking better pictures of each other's men. And I know it's hard. I know it feels weird to like take, because women are so good at doing it for each other. They'll take incredible pictures of each other. It won't even be picture day. It'll just be some good lighting in a random place. And they'll be like, hold up, stop. Let me get you. No. Pose, quick. Yep, see, this is good. You know? It's tough. We don't try enough. We don't try. Even if you muster up the courage as a man to know that you look good that day, and you ask your boy to take a picture of you, as men, we get too uncomfortable trying to make each other look good. Like you're scared to try to make your boy look hot. Even if you're looking good, bona fide, looking good, anybody can see it. You're dressed well, shaved, everything, right? And then you hand the phone to your boy. He's like, got it. That's not helpful. You didn't get it. You didn't get it. That's why when I post the picture, I look like smoke. Because you were so uncomfortable, you couldn't stop, let the phone rest for a sec. The phone didn't even get to adjust. Do you know the technology we have in our pockets? And the phone was like, I didn't get that at all. Women will do anything to take a good picture of their friend, especially when the friendship is mixed. Like when you're out with your male, female friends, and you're just walking, going to a restaurant, whatever, and then there's a moment where it's like, hey, this is good lighting, stop, let me take a picture of you. I've seen work put in. Because they love their friend. The things I've seen, it's not just one of these. I've seen women get angles for each other. Angles that it never occurred to me to get. The way that I've seen women work their knees backwards. No, you be still. I'm good. You be still. That's it right there. That's it. No. Men take such bad pictures of ourselves and have such bad pictures of us taken. I'm pretty sure that's why nobody looks for us when we go missing. Be honest right now. If there is a man that goes missing, if they even put his picture on the local news, it's the worst picture of him if it's not a picture from high school. If it's not his high school picture with that bow tie or whatever, it's just him being like... And then you see the picture and you're like, I think he did it. I think he kidnapped him. That's what happened. I solved it. We don't need to look. That's why when you put a woman's picture on the national news, it's any picture. It's just a picture of her that's recent. And people are like, find her! Because it's a good picture. Another New Year's resolution that I made was to start making, how do I put this? I want to start having manlier mannerisms. The entire time I've been alive, I've just been moving the way I move because it's what feels natural to me in the moment, but I'm seeing every once in a while there'll be someone that comes into my life that shows me that actually, maybe not this way. When I was young, I was working this job, and there was a dude on the job who was he was in prison, and he was on work release. And he took me under his wing and was trying to teach me how to be more of a man. I didn't ask him to, but I also didn't really know how to take up for myself, so... I would do little things, and he would try to correct those things for me, right? And I remember one time I walked in the room, and it was pretty stinky. And because it was stinky, I tried to waft, in front of my face, like waft, like you would when it stinks. You're like, ooh, it's stinky, right? You know what I mean? Like, you've done this. Don't act like it was stinky, right? But the way I did it, my hands were too fluid when I was, because it was stinky, but I felt like this was more efficient to get it out of my face. I was like whipping it out of the way, right? And he saw me and he was like, stop doing that. And I'm like, what? Why? And he's like, your hand looked like a whisper, dog. One time he tried to, dap me up, but he had big hands. And so when he did it, I'm not gonna lie, it hurt. And so I pulled my hand back, and I pulled my hand back like, and he was like, don't do that. I'm like, what should I do then? He's like, I don't know, but not that. The worst one was, people talk about fight or flight, and people often don't talk about freeze, which is what I did in this particular situation. This dude had been on work release, right? And some dudes who he must have got into it with before he went to jail found out where he worked. They waited for him to take a smoke break, and they tried to jump him. Now, initially, when they tried to jump him, they were just pressing him outside, talking. I don't know if he owed them money. I don't know what the situation was. All I know is I'm walking out with the trash, and then they swing on this dude, all right? And then he, by himself, fights off both of these dudes, and he's not really losing or winning, but he'll take one to give one, and then he'll get one good enough that they back up a bit so he can focus on the other one, and then go back to this guy and everything. But then at one point, my man, he gets clipped. He gets clipped by one of these dudes, right? And they have him with an uppercut, and he goes backwards. And I'm not proud of it, but it was my genuine reaction. When he got hit, I did go. Because apparently I touch my cheeks when I gasp. I didn't know that about me either, but nothing had happened to make me gasp in a long time. So when it happened, I was like, oh. And people look at you different. When you do like a full Macaulay Culkin, when you hit them with the Macaulay, with the... Another one of my New Year's resolutions is to take a break from Facebook Marketplace. This is my thing. It's not even that I'm buying a lot, it's just everyone that I seem to buy off of on Facebook Marketplace I'm never meeting them at a good point in their life. Right? So when I meet them, there's a whole energy to it that doesn't feel like just regular commerce. As an example, I went over one time, I needed a bed frame, so I went to purchase the bed frame. Facebook Marketplace, I show up, right? I've already paid, and I show up to pick up the bed frame, and it's not as if I came there to make a friend. I wasn't trying to sit down and have tea or something like that. I really was there to pick up the bed frame and be out. But the way I was being rushed the entire time was making this start to feel like some stolen goods. Do you know what I mean? Just I'm like, all right, so can I help you put it somewhere? Do you have a truck or do you have something? I was like, oh, okay, all right, calm down, right? And then while taking the bed frame, there's a piece missing. And so then they go to get this piece. And when they go to get the piece, there's a truck that pulls up. And then when they walk back out, they're like, oh no. And then this guy gets out of the truck and he's like, Amy, why? Why? And I'm just here for the bed frame. He's like, Amy, why? And she's like, I told you why. I'm done with you. I'm done. I'm sick of it. I'm sick of everything that you do. I've given you so many chances. And now she is yelling over my shoulder. Like I'm here. I'm where I am now. She's right here yelling at him who's behind me going, why? So I am kind of like this child of divorce in this moment. He's like, why? I told you why. No, but why, Amy? Is it him? And I can honestly tell you right now, it didn't look like it would be me, because when he said, is it him, I went, huh? And then she went, what? No. She didn't have that. Now I'm looking at both, I'm like, huh? And they clearly had some stuff to work out, and I was very uncomfortable. I couldn't get the piece because she was still looking for it. He was crying, so I left the bed frame. There was another time where I was going to buy a teddy bear. I had someone that I was trying to get the teddy bear for because they like novelty teddy bears. I was trying to do something a little sweet and everything. And I go there to pick up the teddy bear, and not everybody posts the dimensions of the item that you're buying, but when I get there, the teddy bear, my size, right? So way bigger than I was expecting. The teddy bear is like a 5 foot something teddy bear. And this particular teddy bear, which was apparently like novelty because it was made like handmade and everything, from behind, the teddy bear had a lot of ass. Like a twerkable amount of ass. Like it was cheeky. And so, you know, I'm trying to pick it up and it weighs a man. And so I was like, okay, maybe not. Because now even if I give this as a gift, one, it's too big, and two, I'm gonna have to explain what's happening back here. I went to buy a fridge one time, and I get there and I'm talking to this guy about the fridge, like where I should go get it, and he's looking at me confused. And he's standing right outside of the address that I was given, and he sounded all confused, and then he tells me he's there to buy a fridge. And then homeboy opens the door and basically invited us both to go ahead and haggle in person over the fridge. I was like, that's insane. We had a price. We had a price that we agreed on, and the other guy was like 55. And I was like, you're not helping our case at all. I'm not a good negotiator. I went to buy a couch. This should have been plain and simple. You're moving, I need a couch, you need to get rid of a couch, we're done. I show up, even had the truck ready because I've known from before, you gotta have the getaway vehicle in tow. And sure enough, pull up, you know, we're carrying out the couch in pieces, cushions first, also like that, trying to get the couch lifted up out the door and stuff. And this man who is selling the couch keeps trying to upsell me on dolls that he made himself, and you can tell. He made these like knockoff porcelain Cabbage Patch dolls already freaking looking to begin with. They already look at you, no matter where you are in the room, they got eyes on you. And then he made it so he stuffed them a little bit and then he put a button on it. And when you put the button on it, it was supposed to cry. Like, you know, the way that you buy it, the way it's wham, okay, hold the baby, right. Except he must have recorded the cry. Because this doll's cry was haunting. You press the button on this doll to cry because he did it. No one asked him to. Trying to upsell us on these dolls while we trying to lift a couch that is apparently made out of lead because we cannot get it up. Meanwhile, he not helping, presses the button on the doll, and the doll, instead of a wham, wham, it gives a cry that screams 1800s horror movie. This doll presses the button, this doll goes, ah! I'm doing that because he made so the mouth open. I was so genuinely terrified that I left the couch. That's why I need to take a break from Facebook Marketplace because I don't really leave with my items. I don't really...
You have seen him everywhere, but tonight you are seeing him live. Please put your hands together for Josh Johnson.
Sometimes I find myself falling down whole rabbit holes online of things, stories and stuff. And there's a case, there's a trial. It just ended. And I think it may qualify for trial of the century. I know that's premature to say, but I don't know. I think it's pretty incredible. The trial of Young Thug just ended. Now, if you don't know who Young Thug is, he's a rapper. It's not a dog whistle this time, all right? Young Thug is a rapper that was on trial in Fulton County in Georgia, right? Basically, the state's case, what they were alleging was that he took all of the money that he made from music and he funneled it through and to a gang called YSL, a gang that he was supposedly the leader of, right? And that's the state's case. And the judge in the case looked exhausted. I've never seen a judge act like this before. Every time the court camera cut to her, her head was in her hands. And I'm not gonna act like I know the law, okay? My understanding of the law sort of begins and ends with Law and Order SVU, all right? So I know you can sustain, and you can object. I've never heard a judge be like, you can't do that. She said it a lot. And now the prosecution in the case, the prosecutor had given out a lot of plea deals. Ton of plea deals. More plea deals than I thought you could give out. I didn't have a number in my head, but this felt like an egregious amount of plea deals. It just felt like she was going to the hood like, you get a plea deal, you get a plea deal, you get a plea deal, you get a plea. She was basically giving a plea deal to everybody in Georgia but Young Thug, right? And she was giving these plea deals in return for their cooperation, their testimony that she would use to piece by piece paint the bigger picture that the state was alleging that Young Thug's the leader of YSL. Everything they do is by his direction. All his money goes through and to them, right? And the only problem is the prosecutor in this case gave plea deals to some of the least helpful people in human history, all right? I've never seen people less helpful than this. It was astoundingly unhelpful. I was helping my friend move one time. And he and I had to move a pool table, just us, downstairs. And our third friend was there at the bottom of the stairs just watching. And even he was more helpful than anyone that the prosecutor gave a plea deal to in this case. At least he could be like, watch your step, something. I'm gonna tell you about some of the testimony. I'm gonna need you to be patient with me because a lot of the dudes testified in this trial are going by their rapper name and they haven't made it yet. So I don't know why it's spelled like that. I don't know how to pronounce it. Just, I'm gonna say he for short, all right? There's one dude that was on the stand, right? And prosecutor asked him a very specific question, a very specific reason. She goes, did Young Thug have an issue with Rich Homie Quan bringing his friend to the party, right? Now, Rich Homie Quan is also a rapper who has sadly passed away. But his friend, to the best of my knowledge, allegedly, is a gang member, right? This whole question is to paint Young Thug as a leader of a gang. That's why he would have a problem with a different gang member coming to his party, right? So the prosecutor asked, did Young Thug have an issue with Rich Homie Quan bringing his friend to the party? And then this guy on the stand goes, Thug, did you have an issue with Rich Homie Quan? Never in the history of court have I seen someone ask a question by the prosecution and then go, I'll just go to the source. And so then the prosecutor goes, no, I'm asking you. Did Young Thug have an issue with Rich Homie Quan bringing his friend to the party, all right? And then this guy goes, I'm not Young Thug, so I don't know. Moments later, the prosecutor's asking question after question after question, all alleging the same thing, all to the same end, right? And this dude, he's not being combative. He's not even being rude. He's just not being helpful. And so then the prosecutor pulls up, I don't know if she put up it exactly, but basically references his plea deal where she goes, I have right here you answering questions definitively that I'm asking you right now. And then this guy on the stand goes, y'all wrote that, I just signed it. Never in the history of court, at least that I know of, and it's like, you know, the internet especially was of two minds because it was like people could not decide if these were like some of the dumbest people who had ever lived or legal masterminds. Because basically what this dude is saying in open court, right, is, look, you were about to give me how many years. I didn't want to do how many years, and you told me if I signed the paper, I wouldn't do how many years, right? So I signed the paper, but I'm not about to perjure myself. dude was supposed to be on the stand for 3 hours. 3 days later. The prosecution is asking question after question after question, all to the same end, right? And, references again. Look, I understand that we typed it up, but what is in this is based off of what you said to the police. This is based off of testimony you gave during interrogation. And he was like, yeah, but if you gave it to me to type up, it would say something different than what you have right there, right now. Even the prosecutor was like, oh. Question after question after question after question. And finally, this dude, he doesn't snap exactly. He doesn't lose it, right? I think he just gets exhausted. And finally, he says, look, I'll tell you what I told the police. I'll say anything. Like, this is a witness for the prosecution. It's absolutely insane. The whole case is insane because you even look at the fact that the case had 3 different judges. Yeah, got passed off like a bad baton. First judge was Judge, I don't know how to pronounce his name. I think it's Glanville, yeah. And this judge, he does seem to suck. Like, he does. But he also had to put up with some stuff, too, because there were jurors that were fully out of pocket during this case. Just a couple of examples. There was one juror that got picked. It already took nearly a year, by the way, to pick a jury, which is insane. And then after they picked the jury, there's one juror that during the trial has started, and I think they just went to the Dominican Republic. Deputies got sent to their house, were knocking on the door and everything, and then they got back, and they had to appear in court, and the judge was like, you have jury duty. You have to be here to be on the jury. And they were like, every day? That sounds wildly inconvenient. Then the judge was ready to, hold this jury in contempt and was basically giving them an out because this judge in particular loved contempt. He had a lot of contempt. The entire trial full of contempt. And gave the juror a way out. He was like, look, I could send you to jail, I could fine you, but what I'm gonna have you do instead is write me a 30-page paper on the importance of being a juror. This dude sentenced her to APA style. He sentenced her to citing sources. You couldn't see his face in the moment, but even Thug was like, damn. That's cruel and unusual. I've never heard of that before. There was another juror that I admittedly, I don't even know what happened with this person, but I know that they got in trouble for for live streaming the case. Which is extra crazy because it was being live streamed. Like, if you had been watching at home, you would just see them sit with the jury like... risk jail time for an extra angle. We are. You know, Judge Glanville, oof. There was a lot of plea deals being given out the entire case, like I said before, and some of the things that were happening was this is me guessing, but there were people that were not being super forthcoming, that they probably didn't necessarily have to be, but they were in some sort of trouble, and so the plea deal was just given just as an extra. It's okay, you can talk. We just need to get this guy, right? And even with that, there were still people that didn't quite want to testify. And then there were people that were being so difficult, state's witnesses who were being so difficult that the state just could not get anywhere, you know? And there was one person, star witness. Basically, the prosecution needed a through line. They needed something that would connect everything. And so they laid a lot of it on one person in particular. Okay? And they needed his testimony so bad that they pretty much gave him immunity on the stand. I didn't even know you could do that. It sounds made up. It sounds fake. I feel like he thought it was fake too, because he was like, immunity on, so if I say something on the stand, answering one of your questions, and it implicates Thug, but it also implicates me, I'm okay? Yeah, you're okay, you have immunity. Immunity on the stand, you're gonna be good. You sure? Yeah, you're gonna be good. Okay, I'm not even joking. He goes, okay. Okay, but what if it's federal? And I love that. I love a good haggle. I love okay, I hear immunity, but can I get a federal? Can I get some federal? Federal, please. Can I get a little federal? Oh, it's beautiful. This dude gets all the stab, and you can tell he doesn't trust it. You can tell he's like, nah, they're up to something. Doesn't want to answer any questions, but we told you have immunity. All right. Basically compelling this man to testify, dangling immunity in his face. Sits on the stand. First question from a prosecutor. How old are you? And he goes, grown. And the prosecutor's like, what do you mean by grown? It's like, I'm an adult. Prosecutor is like, okay, seeing as you're an adult, how many years is that? And then he goes, looks over at the judge. I plead the fifth. Truly incredible work. Truly phenomenal, They would be asking him lots of questions, question after question. And it was getting frustrating for the prosecution. It was getting frustrating for the judge because, look, maybe I'm doing my best to be as fair as possible. But when you watch a case like this, it does just seem like if you're a defendant, you're up against two parties. You're up against the prosecution and you're up against the judge, because everything in this case kept giving the prosecution chances, even when they would mess up. Because once again, they're not being given a lot with testimony, but there are things that they have in hard evidence. They're just not bringing them all together to make it cohesive, right? And then this star witness's testimony is not helping. So then, can't stress this enough, you cannot do this. Judge Glanville supposedly has a secret meeting with the witness and the prosecution, but not Young Thug's lawyers, right? It's something in Latin that I don't know how to pronounce, but you're not supposed to do it. I mean, and basically, in this meeting, this witness is then threatened with the dangled immunity and everything. Oh, we'll charge you for this. We'll hold you in contempt for 2 years. We'll put you in jail. All this stuff, unless you start testifying, unless you start answering questions to the best of your ability. I don't want to hear any more of this pleading of the fifth, all that stuff, right? And so then they go back to court, and he's answering questions so well that the defense gets suspicious. Defense is like, what happened between now and lunch? All of a sudden, he remembers everything. He remembered what color everybody was wearing. And then it comes to the defense lawyer's attention that there was this secret meeting. And so he addresses it in court, in front of the judge, to the judge. He goes, Your Honor, I've heard some distressing news that there was a secret meeting with you, the prosecution, and the witness. My client and I were not privy to. I don't know what was discussed. You know, this person's acting different. Not like, what is this? And the judge, instead of denying it, instead of being like, that's a horrible accusation, that's not true at all, the judge goes, who told you that? And you can look at it because it was live streamed. You can look, who told you that? And he's like, Your Honor, don't worry about who told me that. That's the least of my concern. It's who told me that. The meeting is my concern. He's like, no, I need to know. This is very distressing. I need to know who told you that. And he's like, Your Honor, it doesn't matter who told me that. Is that true? Like, did that happen? Who told you that? Who told you that? Who told you that? Who told you that? Over and over and over. And it's just wild that, like, in a RICO case involving supposed gang members, that the judge is like, who snitched? Nah, for real, who snitched? Huh? Like, hey, I need you to come up out them names. Who snitched? Ain't nobody play with, look, I will bust everybody in here right now. Who snitched? And Thug's lawyer is like, no, look, I'm not gonna tell you, all right? I'm not gonna tell you how I came upon this knowledge. I'm just asking you if this happened. I'm asking you, maybe even for a mistrial. Like, how could this happen? He goes, who told you? Who told you? I'm gonna give you 5 minutes to tell me who told you. And Thug's lawyer is like, I don't need 5 minutes. I'm not gonna tell you. That should be the least of your concern. Like, is this true? And he's like, I'm gonna hold you in contempt if you don't tell me. I will put you in jail if you don't tell me. You will go to jail if you do not tell me. It's like, look, I'm not going to tell you. You can put me in jail, but the problem is the meeting. The problem isn't who told me, right? And so then the judge does it. He holds Thug's lawyer in contempt, which is pretty terrifying. You know? This judge is basically going over and over again. Who snitched? Who snitched? I can't stand a snitch. And you know... And you couldn't see Thug's face in the moment, but he had to have been like, I know, right? And so then Glanville does it. He holds Thug's lawyer in contempt. And, you know, the Bar Association hears about it. And they show up to back Thug's lawyer up because that's terrifying. That's terrifying if a judge does something, doesn't even bother denying it, and then holds you in contempt for asking. That's a scary court system. You know what I mean? Because that's one of those things. If it can happen to anybody, it can happen to anybody. Like, I know that it's a case involving hip hop, involving like gang culture, whatever. But that particular thing, that could happen to anybody. I promise you. That's very scary. You know. And so the Bar Association shows up to back this dude up, and it looks like his case is going to be heard, and probably the contempt is going to be thrown out. But basically, they tell Glanville, it's like, there's no way you're impartial. If you're trying this hard, there's no way you're willing to just let the facts play out. And so Glanville has to recuse himself from the case. And one of the things about recusing yourself, it doesn't undo damage. The case just goes on, you know? So there's still this like contempt hanging over Thug's lawyer's head and stuff. And then they move on to the next judge, and the next judge was the judge for a day. I'm not a judge, and I don't know how judges get cases and stuff. Apparently this case was just given to her randomly and everything, and then she got the case and she was immediately like, hey, y'all, I can't. And so many people were like, why? What's the problem? Don't worry about me. I can't right now. And so then the case goes to the third judge. You know, the judge just, that judge. The case goes to her, and she does her best. But it's very difficult. It's very difficult because there are things happening in the case that should just never happen. They actually had an officer come in who was, I guess you could almost call him a specialist in RICO cases through his police work, right? And even he made a mistake on the stand that had the defense asking for a mistrial, because basically the state handled the case so poorly, so messy, just so confusing, right? That the defense would be asking for a mistrial consistently. They were asking for a mistrial the way that you act when you got 2 cards left in Uno. Anybody do anything, you're like, oh. Defense would call for a mistrial nonstop. That's a mistrial right there, Your Honor. He just sneezed. That's a mistrial. He gonna get everybody sick. Because this witness on the stand, you know, his testimony, I'm pretty sure, had to be thrown out, because even though he's an expert in RICO and everything, it was 2 things were revealed that were pretty distressing. One, it's a RICO case, so they're trying to get everybody on everybody's crimes, but they never bothered to really look at the financial records of Thug. Which is pretty insane if you're telling me that all the money he makes, he runs through and to a gang. And you didn't bother to check a Chase statement or anything? That's wild. And then, while this officer is giving testimony, he makes a mistake that obviously wouldn't be called out by the prosecution, but does not get called immediately. And then the defense hears it, and then they're like, this is crazy. We can't allow it. Basically, he references past convictions as part of a testimony to what this person would have done in this case. And you can't do that. You got to judge it by the merits of the evidence you have in front of you about what happened right now, right? And at one point, the judge loses it. She storms out. The judge goes, I can't take it anymore. She hadn't even been the judge the whole time, but she was like, this is insanity. And you couldn't see his face, but you could imagine Thug being like, I know, right? Like, and so she almost grants a mistrial. You know, there's a mistrial with prejudice and mistrial without prejudice. Mistrial with prejudice is basically don't even bring it up again. mistrial without prejudice, it's like, okay, you didn't make the best case, or something happened, or a bunch of jurors went to the Dominican Republic. So, like, we can try it again later.
And so, the judge at one point has had it with the prosecution and is giving like a full-on. You just so rarely hear people talk to like this on a live stream that aren't on a Zoom call at home. Like this, she was just like, she was looking at the prosecution and she was at her wit's end and she was like, I don't know what to say to you. Like, I don't know, with the years of experience that you have, I don't know if you were willfully trying this case as badly as possible, or if you were just so unorganized that you can't seem to string a coherent thought together on how two things are related. And we've heard testimony. There are people that don't show up. We're leaving at 4:25. Like, what is happening? And the whole time, prosecution is like, oh. You ever just take your talking to because you're like, yeah, it's pretty bad. Yeah, and like the prosecutor had the same nod that dudes have on the street when they getting yelled at on Valentine's Day. It's just like, just go ahead and nod and accept that you've messed up. It was so bad. And it'd be thing after thing after thing, whether it was jurors, whether it was judges, whether it was just wild testimony. There were people so uncooperative, right? Like, there was one point where they showed this guy a picture, right? And it's a picture of him and Thug and two other people, apparently with the person, I don't know, I didn't see the picture, but apparently with the person who was murdered, right? Because that's one of the charges. There's drug trafficking, there's like gun running, there's all this stuff, but there's also a murder, right? And when it comes to the murder, that's one of the big ones, because they're alleging that Thug paid for the getaway car, right? And so once again, not checking his financial record seems like an oversight. I'm not a lawyer. I'm just saying. And they show a picture, right, with all these people to someone on the stand. And they're like, do you recognize anyone in this picture? And he's like, I see me. Okay, fair enough. Even when it came to start with this, there was one time where they simply asked this dude, when did you meet Young Thug? And he was like, before I went to jail. And just for the sake of clarity, the prosecutor tried to clarify, which time before you went to jail? And he just goes, you right. And I don't know how you handle this sort of thing, because this ended up being the longest trial in Georgia's history. Also one of the most expensive, if not the most expensive, because I guess plea deals cost a lot of money. And it gets so bad that every day defense is like, hey, mistrial's still an option. You want to hit it with no mistrial? We can mistrial. But then, the prosecution would do something that would kind of warrant a little bit of a mistrial. Like, there was even one point where they had someone on the stand read a caption from an Instagram post. And this caption had been poured over because basically through the hashtags, what a lot was being alleged, because, you know, whenever there's letters, whenever there's numbers, it could have no meaning, or it could have double meaning, or it could mean exactly what the prosecution wants it to mean. It could mean what the defense wants it to mean. And so they were arguing about this one picture over and over again before they would let the person just read it out loud to the jury, right? Because then I don't know if it's a gang, and I don't know if that was what the prosecution was alleging, but there was one point where the prosecutor was asking someone on the stand about a series of numbers, right? And a lot of people will sort of rep their area code. That's just a common thing throughout America, right? Exactly. That one, that's one of those things. It's like, you don't even, it's so unifying. Everyone does it. Like, sometimes you just can't help it. Yeah. But this is my thing. The dude on the stand, prosecutor asked him, "What's 374?" And he was like, "Numbers." Maybe it's a gang, maybe it's not. I have no idea, right? But basically, there's this one picture that's being poured over and over again, and this was the straw that sort of broke everything, right? Because they made agreements, and they had even redacted the picture so that only what would be read was what the prosecution and defense agreed on, based off of the evidence that they were both showing, right? But then when they actually gave the picture to the person on the stand, nothing was redacted. And the prosecutor had them read everything. And so then the defense is like, "Your Honor." I've never heard a lawyer have to like go "Your Honor," kind of like, "Mom," like. But this was it. "Your Honor. We just went over the thing. Why would Shaw?" And sure enough, Judge agreed. Judge was like, "Look, I gotta do something else with my life too. Like, it's just, it can't just be this." And the judge said an interesting thing, and like I said, I know a little bit about the law, most of it, what not to do from this case. But the judge says something where she's like, I'm basically trying to salvage something here, because I don't want an entire jury's 11 months to be wasted. I don't want, which to me is a little weird. Their time's already been wasted. Like, this is about seeing if someone did or didn't do something, you know? And so that statement was said, but then, you know, judge turns to the defense and goes, "I'm not gonna grant you a mistrial with prejudice, but would you like a mistrial without prejudice?" And defense was like, "Yup." And then she was like, "I'm inclined to give it to you, because this whole thing, this right here, no. No. And so then, you know, they get to plea dealing a bunch of people day after day after day. And then they actually go to Thug, and they're like, "Look, you're facing like 25, 40 years for all the things that we are alleging, right? But we'll give you probation, right? We'll give you probation if you just admit that you are the leader of YSL, a gang where you can take all the money and you funnel it through into the gang, and everything they do is at your direction. Like, if you'll just say that, probation, you'll be good to go, right?" And then Thug says, No, I'm not just gonna accept. You came to me to make your case for you. I mean, no. And that's a very, I don't know. To me, that's a very, like, brave thing. Like, I don't even fully understand all of the conditions around the sentence that he actually got, but that was what he was initially presented with. And he said no. And then the state said, okay, we're going to make sure that you do 25 years. And that doesn't sit right with me. And it obviously didn't sit right with his defense attorney. His defense attorney brought it up when the judge was about to make a decision. Basically, he says, Your Honor, the state came to us and they said he could do probation if he signs this piece of paper, or he could do 25 years if he doesn't. And I'm just kind of curious why the state would allow someone that they're so sure is a racketeering, drug peddling murderer to go free with probation if they're sure, right? And that he'll do 25 years if he doesn't say what they're so sure of. And the judge was like, good point. That is very hard to argue against. You know? And then the judge granted Thug probation, and, you know, he went home. And there are some people that are like, man, you know, if he could have just stuck it out a little bit longer, seen the trial to its end, there's no way he would have been convicted. The defense was ruining the state, like, just at every turn. And it was mostly the state tripping over themselves, right? And I get it, though. That dude sat in jail without bond. Dude was in jail for 2 years. He was in jail for a year while they picked a jury. He was in jail the entire trial, you know? And every once in a while, don't get me wrong, every once in a while, Thug would also laugh. Because, like, he was facing a lot of time, but every once in a while, he'd also be like, how did we get here? This seems... Far be it for me to say, I'm just a rapper, but as far as the law goes... But what? I don't know. I don't know. I get it. I get somebody tells you, hey, you just do 3 more months, you'll go free forever. Maybe. That's scary, you know? And it's also scary that, like, that the state needed it this bad. That a lot of cases come down to reputation over justice. You couldn't just take the L. Right? It's like, no, you will die in prison for me to not look bad. That's terrifying, you know? And I know it feels like it can't happen. Yeah, I mean, like, I don't rap, but I could see myself in a bad situation. You know? Because it kind of begs the question, you know, did this person get away with a bunch of stuff? Or did the state just jam someone up for 2 years? You know, thanks. But that's my thing. It's like I don't even know. And I'm obviously not Thug. You know, I hope that everybody can like move on in the most prosperous way possible. I really do. Everybody that testified, everybody. I wish the best for everyone, I really do. I just can't seem to think there's a level of peace you have to attain that I don't know if I have. Because if someone accused me of being this like drug running, you know, murderer, this horrible person, like this that did all these things, and they were willing to put me in jail forever with a bad case that they didn't have enough evidence for, and then they were just like, you can go if you just sign it. I think it would make me mad enough to kill someone. But that's just me.
Mira,